What's going on, everybody? Fedor here from 3D Print SOS. Welcome back to the channel. And in today's video, we are going to be talking about Klipper. I'm sure you hear it all over the place if you're into 3D printing at all. But specifically, we are going to be talking about BigTreeTech's offering in their Raspberry Pi alternative line, as well as here the different pads that are coming out from different manufacturers. They've made their own called the PAD7. And this essentially adds their CM4 or CB1 in their case and Pi adapter. It incorporates that into a package that incorporates a screen that runs KlipperScreen on it. And I want to go over both of these things and kind of go over what the benefits are of using both of them. Now, this one right over here, the raw CB1 plus the adapter to make it essentially act like a Raspberry Pi. This particular combination is just around $36 at the moment, which is a fantastic deal if you want to breathe some new life into a 3D printer that you already have, or want to just check out Klipper without spending too much money. Now, the downside here is it runs headless, which means you're not going to have a screen. You just use your computer to do everything. That's not necessarily a downside, to be honest. It's really nice to be able to do that. You can even go onto the website of your front end on your phone right next to your machine if you really want it to be right there next to your machine. So it's really not that big a deal. But the main one is you're gonna have to find a way to power this. So usually I either use an old charger that I might be laying around, like a USB charger, or you can run it directly from your power supply on your machine if you have a really inexpensive buck converter, because you're going to have to step down from 24 volts to whatever this is. Typically it's 5 volts. Now, talking about the screen, the downside here is it's around $150, but there's a huge upside to getting something like this. It's not only in a nice package, it's all ready to go, besides firmware, of course, or software, I should say, but it also has an accelerometer inside, so you can get input shaping right away instead of having to buy one and make it yourself with something like this. But this definitely gets you into Klipper at the lowest possible price point, and this is just a really nice package. Now, what's the difference between the PAD7 and the other alternatives that are out there? For example, Creality has their own, and the Sonic Pad, and we have FLSun with their own called Speeder Pad. Now, both of these come from the companies that try to utilize the same technology for their own machines. For example, with Creality, they have a ton of one-button installations for all of their Creality machines. Same with FLSun. So if you have one of those branded machines, getting one of these might actually be better. However, getting other machines on these is a little bit more tricky. It doesn't necessarily make it 100% easy with their interface, and you kind of have to go around some of their things to make it work. And it does, and I've used them with other machines. I actually made a video, you can see it right over here, where I took the Creality Sonic Pad and used a VoxLab Aquila with it, and it works perfectly fine. It's actually down behind me. Wow. Okay, I can never get this right correct. Whatever. You see it back there with the screen. There you go. It's right over there. I run it with my Aquila and it works just fine. Whereas the PAD7 is just a Linux computer where you can install a raw Klipper interface onto it, which just means that you're not bound by any brand trying to control you in whichever way. You just have Klipper running on their hardware. It's very similar to how this would work, or how it would work if you just have a Raspberry Pi where you added your own screen to it. So that some people really like, especially if you want to use this type of thing with a bunch of different printers. You can just run raw Klipper without, like I said, being kind of forced into a user experience from a specific brand. So what I wanted to show in this video today is how to install Klipper onto these machines, because it's really easy, and then hook them up to some Klipper printers and see what they're all about. But this morning I saw that Daniel from MODBOT actually made a really good tutorial on how to install Klipper onto the CB1. And he uses the newer integrated Raspberry Pi, but the installation is the same for this. So I'm gonna link right up here to his video, as well as down in the description. So if you guys are interested in installing Klipper, when you're ready, when you buy one of these devices, you can jump in on Daniel's video and follow along. That's literally what I'm going to do to get that done. So I'm gonna unbox these. I'm gonna throw these in. I'm gonna install this on top of itself. I'm gonna unbox this thing, get it all out. Then I'm gonna install Klipper onto them, and then, well, I want to kind of attach them to something and discuss what they're all about. So let's go ahead and get them unboxed and set up, and I'll see you in a second. Alright, I just wanted to show you guys this real quick. So this is how the CB1 and adapter look when they are together. It's the same size as a Raspberry Pi, but if the board itself is about 3 fingers wide, and it kind of goes onto this adapter that gives you really similar I/O to the Raspberry Pi. There is a Wi-Fi antenna. When you print something to hold this, or wherever you mount this, you can obviously mount it on top or mount it higher so you can get a better Wi-Fi signal. But one of the things that I have optionally is also a heatsink that they sell. I think this is around $5 to add on, and it covers the entire CB1 and all 3 of its chips right there with this little adhesive that adds it on there, as well as some hardware that goes in from the back of the board. But one thing I wanted to mention is you power it with a USB-C, which is very nice. And one other addition that is really welcome is this 5-volt fan pin right over here, which means you can add a fan on top of this without taking any pins. The example there is my Voron right back here. I use a Raspberry Pi to run Klipper on it, and it uses most of the valuable GPIO pins to run UART directly to the board. And then also I have my ADXL using up another chunk of my GPIO pins to run the ADXL on it, the accelerometer. So that doesn't leave many pins for fans. In fact, it doesn't leave any, but it does leave a 3.3 volt fan on my Raspberry Pi. So I run a 5-volt fan for the Raspberry Pi on a 3.3 volt pin from the Pi. It kind of just undervolts it a bit and still functions. But here, even if you take up all of the pins, you have your own dedicated fan pin. So that makes this a little bit more usable and just thought out. So there's also a very easy camera plug right there if you use one of those Pi cameras, as well as you have your just 8 mini HDMI and HDMI. So it's just 2 HDMIs there if you want to use this just as a Linux computer. And also on the back there you have your DSi if you want to use a screen that has a DSi connector to it. So actually a very nice little alternative. Like I said, this is around $36. This one is version 1.0. I think they might have a newer one. And there's also an integrated version of this that's not separated like this. It is just a single board instead of 2. So lots of things, lots of options with this, and very inexpensive for what it is. So with that being said, well, let's check out the screen. Okay, now let's move on to our pad. So as you see, the size here, it is not too big, not too small. It's pretty nice. It has kind of like a chunky build to it. It feels really nice in the hand, to be honest with you. A little bit better than some of the other ones, I must say. Like the plastic isn't creaky or soft or anything like that. This thing feels really robust. It has some external buttons such as power. We have up and down, I'm guessing for like volume, because it has an audio jack. Because this is essentially a computer, we're just going to run Klipper on it. It has a USB on the back, as well as 2 more USBs on the on the side there, as well as 2 more on the back. Has a USB-C on the bottom there, Ethernet plug, CAN plug, and an SPI. As far as SPI goes, you get a cable, an SPI cable that goes to an ADXL that you can mount to your print head or clamp to your bed, depending on what type of machine you're running. Another thing I noticed is it has a 32 gigabyte SD card included, which is very nice for them to include. I didn't really expect that, to be honest. One of the things that comes with it is a USB adapter for that SD card, as well as a thermal pad. To be honest, I'm not quite sure why the thermal pad's included. Maybe if you want to do some maintenance or remove the CB1 or something along those lines. I'm not sure. They give you some hardware to mount a CB1 once again, and then also a barrel adapter here, which means that if you wanted to power this directly from your printer, if you wanted to mount this on your printer or at least near your printer and wanted to just have one plug, you could technically make your own. This does have an input of 12 volts right over here, so you will still need a buck converter to take it from 24 volts to 12 volts to run something like this, but they included for the people that want to do their own thing with it, which is pretty cool. And the last thing that comes with it is also a power adapter with pretty much every single power plug for every country. So that makes it really easy to just get this thing right out of the box. So as you can see, the proposition here is actually pretty nice. It comes with everything that you want. You can use it as a computer. You can use it for Klipper. It has a screen. So we have extreme budget and in my opinion, fairly priced thing, product for what you're getting here, and the quality of this. Though most importantly, though, both come with rubber duckies. Well, you can add them to your collection. No, they don't come with magnets. I super glue magnets to the bottom of mine. I also have a few more somewhere else, but I think my kid's been playing with them. I can't really find them. All right, so I just found out a bunch more little details as well as just answer some of my own questions, so I figured I'd let you in on it. So I took off this little cover down here, and you can see the little CB1 board right underneath the heatsink, as well as some options here. You can actually switch between a CB1 and CM4, so if you wanted to run a Raspberry Pi CM4 right here, that's why they included the little thermal pad, so that you can just switch the little switch over here, throw in your CM4 and be good to go. There's also a bunch of different modes that are outlined here, like for example there's an EEPROM, SoC boot and COC reset, a bunch of little things, as well as you can choose between what this SPI does, SPI connector does, whether you use it for the actual ADXL or if you plug in a CAN bus board, for example. One of the other things I noticed is it says not only a Klipper pad, and I think they really mean it because there's speakers installed into here. Actually some fairly large looking drivers. I don't know how they sound, but quite interesting. There's also some LEDs behind the screen over here, so there's actually quite a bit going on. I also saw in the documentation you can very easily remove this handle if you wanted, and in fact, just for some quality things, they added some magnets here that mount onto the screws that hold this little plate over here, just to hold it in nice and tight when you're not using it. They even went as far as printing those same settings on the cover to this little thing, as well as on the PCB board itself. So a bunch of little quality things that are just very nice and make it very easy. It looks like in the instructions there's even a code right here that takes you to content to help you figure out what things are. The documentation is actually pretty decent. They give you pinouts for the SPI in case you wanted to, I don't know, run an external fan or something like that. You can do it right from there. So lots of cool little features for this thing. Now that we have these two awesome little products, let's throw some Klipper on here and see what it do. Okay, so I got them both set up, and I wanted to start with the CB1. So what I did here is, as you can see, I have an extension cord. On this side, I have the power adapter running for the PAD7. Here I have just a spare charger style. I made sure that it's a 5-volt 3-amp plug here, and just a USB-C cable running to the CB1. You can see this light blinking. It does take a while for it to start blinking for the very first boot, but it is indeed up and running, and I think you could see the screen right over here. This should be our CB1. Yes, there is an error there, and that's because there's no printer configuration file right now, but we can get to the screen. And the reason why you're seeing fluid and not mainsail is because just when I first booted this, I went to my router, got the IP address, got in, I SSH'd into the CB1, and then I installed Kia. Kia is Kiauh, and it's just a little piece of software that allows you to install Klipper and a bunch of other things that are similar. Everything is already pre-installed. It just takes you to mainsail, which there's nothing wrong with mainsail. A lot of people actually prefer mainsail, but most of my machines that run Klipper run fluid, so I wanted to install fluid. So I used Kia to uninstall mainsail, installed fluid, and yes, you can run the both at the same time. I just don't need mainsail, so I uninstalled it. I also used that same thing to make sure everything is updated, and then I rebooted, and now we're back. I can never get the side right. And now we're back up and running, as you can see. As for the PAD7, just plug in, turn it on, you add in your Wi-Fi information, go to settings, and just update everything so you're on the latest. And well, as you can see right over here, I just made sure the colors are different so I can tell the difference. PAD7 is up and running as well. So they're both up and running. They're both running Klipper. Setup was really easy. Obviously, the PAD7 was extraordinarily easy in comparison, but this is not so bad. You can just follow MODBOT's directions. It's fairly easy to do. There's a little text document you open to put in your Wi-Fi information, and the rest is really, really easy if you use Kia. It's literally 3 copy and paste commands to get Kia up and running, and the rest in there is which one do you want to update or install. It's just a self-explanatory way to do it. I'm not going to get too deep into it, but very easy. The Wi-Fi seems to be working quite well. Nothing else is left except to grab a config file, to grab a printer of choice, and to show you how both of them work with either device. All right, let's get into that. All right, I prepped a bunch of stuff on my desk. Let me go ahead and switch views so I can show you what I got going on. So first, let's start here. This is the Core XY Ghost 6 by Flying Bear. This is a very budget-friendly machine. I recently did some videos on this one, so check those out on the channel if you guys are interested about this machine. But this one I have running from the CB1. And as you can see, all I have is a USB-C cable powering the CB1, and then a USB-A cable going to the printer. This one came with this particular machine. Another thing you might notice is that the machine is on, but the screen is not on, and I'll go over that in a second here. The second machine is the Sovol SV06, another budget-friendly machine. That one is not Core XY, that one is a bed slinger, and as you can tell, it's kind of modeled after a Prusa with some budget-friendly features on there, as well as just a ton of features. But that one I have running Klipper on the PAD7, and I'll explain why I chose this way in a second. So let's move back a little bit and start over here. So for this machine, to get it running, you're going to need 2 files. You're going to need a bin file. In this particular for this particular machine, we need a firmware.bin file, and we need a printer.configuration file, both of which I'll include down in the description. So the first thing you need to do is get the machine running Klipper. Take the SD card, put the firmware.bin on the SD card, and boot up this machine. What you'll notice is there'll be some text running on the screen, and then it'll kind of freeze up after a few seconds. That's how you know it's already done. So just go ahead and remove the SD card, turn the machine off, and then turn it back on. And what you'll notice is you will no longer have anything on the screen. I'll go over that in a little bit, but that's how you actually know that you're running Klipper. The next thing that you have to do is boot up your CB1, make sure it's connected, turn both things on, and head over to this screen. And I'll show you a little bit closer right over here. In this screen, all you're gonna have to do is go to configuration, click your printer.cfg file, and just go ahead and paste what I have in my printer.cfg file. I'll clean this up a little bit so you don't have to mess with it. And then all you have to do after you paste everything in is just hit save and restart, and then the machine will go ahead and reboot. The CB1 will reboot, and hopefully you'll get to this screen right over here without any errors. If there are errors, actually Klipper does a really good job telling you exactly what it is. For example, since I'm running Fluid and on Mainsail that was pre-installed on the CB1, there was an error saying I still have Mainsail in my Moonraker configuration. So all I have to do is go to configuration. I had to go to Moonraker right here and just remove a line in here that basically called for a Mainsail configuration. You just remove it, hit save and restart, and here we go. We are already running Klipper. So literally 2 files. 2 very simple things to do. Like I said, they're going to be included down in the description below if you guys are interested in running a CB1 or similar on the Ghost 6. You can actually run any Klipper file with any Klipper device with those 2 files. So that will be included. But as you can see, if we hit home, the machine goes ahead and does its homing procedure and everything is good. As you can see, I was testing a little bit, and this particular configuration is actually quite nice. There's some predetermined macros, there's some temperatures here already set up for you, so you can go ahead and play and do all of your stuff. However, it is worth noting that in this setup with the CB1 and this machine, there's no screen. This is going to be running completely headless. What that means is everything is going to be done through this screen. That's not a bad thing because this is just an IP address. You can get this from any device on your network. You can get it from any Android, from any Apple, from literally anything that can get a browser screen up. So if you really want it to be right next to the machine, if it's not set up in something like this next to your computer, you can just pull that up and use this interface from there, or you can do it from your slicer, or you can do it from here like I have it pictured up top from the browser. So still lots of ways to interact with this particular machine, but there's a little bit more. The reason why I wanted to show this particular setup is there is actually a lot that you can do to this machine. It lends itself really well to modifications, and same with the CB1. What I mean by that is the CB1 would be really nicely mounted on the inside here on the side panel. There's actually some fan, there's a big fan blowing in there, so some air circulation would also be helpful to the CB1. Or you could just 3D print a case and mount it somewhere externally, or even just having it sitting behind it or next to it, wherever you would like to have the CB1, it would actually work. But the most important part is this screen right here is an MKS screen, and I'll put a link down in the description below where it shows you how you can repin this screen to actually run a very similar screen, KlipperScreen, as the PAD7. The PAD7 does right on here. So if your CB1 is actually mounted inside, you could actually run cables directly to the CB1 to be able to run KlipperScreen right here. So as you can imagine, when all this is hard installed to the machine, you can have a screen right here. That might be something that you could look forward to. Although you could totally use the machine as is like this, and it would be totally fine. So that's this particular setup. Works really easily, just 2 files. Let's move on to the SV06. So the SV06 is a really similar case, except there's a little bit of a gotcha in the setup. So you're also going to need 2 files, the printer configuration file as well as a clipper.bin file. So not firmware.bin, clipper.bin, and I'll include both of these files down in the description as well. Let's go ahead and switch this browser to the PAD7. There you go. I just have it in a purple color. So for the PAD7, for the SV06, you're going to need to put on that clipper.bin file onto the SD card of the SV06, but without anything on it. I did notice that when I had other files on it, it did not take the firmware. So empty out your SD card, throw that clipper.bin on there, and go ahead and start your machine up with power with that SD card on. You'll notice that the screen will eventually go blank, and that's how you know you have Klipper installed. However, the keen eye will show you that there's actually stuff on the screen. The next time you take the SD card out of the printer and reboot, you'll notice that you have some basic information on the screen, and that's because Klipper actually works with this type of screen just like Vorons do. There's a Voron Trident behind me that has the same exact screen as that. So you with the SV07, you have some basic level of information there. There's actually some configuration files. There's all sorts of little things you can do in there, just like a traditional printer. You could heat things up, that sort of thing. So if you're into that, that's available for you. Then going back to the PAD7, you might notice some information on here that wouldn't look exactly like this, but it might show an error code. Actually, I'm pretty sure it will, because you're gonna once again have to go into the configuration. You're gonna have to jump into the printer config, and in here take my configuration that I give you, paste it in here, hit save and restart, just like with the other machine. And then once it boots to this screen, we'll be ready to go. As you can see, if we hit home, the machine will go ahead and do its homing procedure, and we are set. One other thing you'll notice is the screen will now be reading all of the information from the printer. We got temperatures, we got graphs for that. You can do homing, you can do everything that you can do on this screen on the PAD7. So that's the wonderful part about it. The other wonderful part about it is it has plenty of USBs on it. You can hook up another printer. For example, if I had this sitting right here and I owned both of these machines, technically I could just run this USB cable from the Go 6 right into the back of this and just switch printers on here and use just this one thing for both machines. So you can run up to 4 Klipper machines off this one pad. So definitely much more powerful option than the CB1. In my eyes, the CB1's kind of like worth integrating, whereas the PAD7 is this nice standalone device that kind of handles everything for you. So as you can see, we are homed and ready to print. We can go ahead and change our temperatures. You can let's say heat for PLA, and you can see everything changes. It even changed up top for the you can see it's going to 40 on the bed and 195 on the hot end. So yeah, you have everything. I'm gonna hit cool down, and you can have all of your commands right here at your fingertips on the table, or you can always go to the larger view and do everything here. I also noticed that even though there aren't macros set up here, which obviously you can add on, you can do anything you want with Klipper. One of the other things you can do is you can go to configuration, and here you have some things like Z calibrate and bed mesh. Like for example, if we hit bed mesh here, we can just hit calibrate, and it's going to go ahead and run the bed mesh calibration because it's all built into Klipper. As you can see, it's working on it right now. It's going to store it and do its thing. So as you can see, there's a definite convenience to having the PAD7 as well as power. One of the other benefits is the fact that it has input shaper. Like I mentioned, it has an ADXL that you can just plug in and then install it onto your hot end and then go from there. Whereas with the CB1, you're gonna have to add an accelerometer yourself, but you can, however, buy a USB-based accelerometer and not mess with any pins if that's what you're into. Alright, so hopefully you enjoyed this look at both the budget-friendly way to get Klipper installed on your machine or the premium way to install Klipper on your machine, as well as potentially multiple machines with this awesome little PAD7 that is all-inclusive and has a ton of benefits just to it itself. As always, guys, if you guys enjoyed this video, please go ahead and share it. Maybe someone else will enjoy it as well. More importantly, if you are interested in any of these items, I have included links down below. They are affiliate links, and that is how I keep getting these machines and these devices over here to test them, to make content on them and share that with you. So please go ahead and use those affiliate links. It costs you nothing, and all it does is I direct you where to go, and in return I get a small commission if you guys end up purchasing something. So it obviously helps the channel. Another way that really helps the channel, and I'm very grateful for it, is my Patreon members and YouTube members. Thank you guys, you literally fund this channel, so I really appreciate it. Alright, I think that's all for me for today, and as always, I'll see you all in the comments. Later.